Because I went on to that season like any other, I was like, I'm going to be on The Bachelor. You're not like, oh, I'm going to be on what will turn out to be this really controversial, like weirdly iconic in a negative way season.
Were you surprised when you found out that, there were going to be clips of you all over ABC again?
It's funny you say that. When a producer first reached out to me to ask me if I wanted to come on for that chat, Chris Harrison, I was like, greatest ever? Really? That's like a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? And he was like, well, it depends, how you define greatest. Like, the Great Depression? So yeah, we were joking about it. Knowing that Clare was already, crowned Bachelorette, I had a good feeling that it was probably going to happen. So I had plenty of time to wrap my mind around it. That's not to say that I didn't have any anxiety surrounding it. When you do something like that, you don't necessarily expect it to air again, even in a montage style capacity 7 years later.
Yeah. And I saw on social media and in the recap you wrote, you were kind of trying to seek some justice for Juan Pablo.
Yeah, it was kind of cathartic to write in a way, just as someone who has, I know I just say in my position, like it's not like my position's so hard or anything, but for the last 6.5 years, truly, if anyone stops me on the street or I get emails or DMs or anything, it's always like, oh, that piece of shit. And I'm always like, most of the time I try, even in the moment, it sort of depends on my energy levels and how open the person I'm speaking to seems. But often I'll be like, he wasn't so bad. But then there's just times where you're like, you just smile and nod and you're like, yes, sure, I dodged a bullet, okay. Whatever ABC told you to think, sure.
What do you think the biggest misconception about him in general is, from what you know from your time on the show?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me was there's just so many. It's hard. The biggest misconception. Oh, that's hard. Probably if I had to distill down to one, just the fact that he doesn't care about, I didn't care about the other women's feelings or wasn't curious about them, simply because that truly was the polar opposite to my experience, where I felt like he asked me plenty of questions. We bonded over the results of those questions. We ended up having conversations based on them. And he remembered the answers to those questions. The next time I had a one-on-one date, he would refer to something I had said like weeks ago. So things like that. I know that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but if we were going to break it down to all the things he did wrong, that's one of many examples that I have of just disagreeing with the masses on that.
I also think it's just so interesting with the Clare being brought back and them airing their breakup in the promo and stuff, and it just bringing back all of these emotions and stuff. Do you think it's almost a disservice to both Clare and Juan Pablo for like the focus of her like intro to be all about something that happened 7 years ago? Because I kind of do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's not like that was Clare's only run on the show. I know it was her first and most prominent run on the show, but I agree, and I did discuss this in my recap, how I feel that the two are mutually exclusive. The fact that she told off Juan Pablo in no way, reflects how great a bachelorette should be. It's like, oh, she has the ability to tell off men. Like I'm more interested in her traits as a woman. And what about her I can relate to? Well, maybe what about her is different from me, but why I would want to watch her on TV. It has nothing to do with, to me, that's how I feel. And of course, I'm going to have a biased take on this because I don't think he's all that bad. And so I recognize that I am biased, of course.
Well, I also love that you wrote that in your recap. You're like, quote, worst bachelor ever. Like, I don't know when people started saying that about him, but it is a label that stuck. And I don't know when or why, but it definitely stuck.
It did. And it was very weird to watch unfold. Because I went on to that season like any other, I was like, I'm going to be on The Bachelor. You're not like, oh, I'm going to be on what will turn out to be this really controversial, like weirdly iconic in a negative way season. And like I said, to this day, I cannot mention what season I was on or mention that I was on the show and not have people react in some sort of like, oh, way.